Hi there. I am so excited today to be kicking off this very first episode of my new podcast series, my very first podcast series called Business the Heart Way. It's a very, very special launch episode, and I'm even more excited, I should say, about who I have joining me today. It's my good friend, entrepreneur extraordinaire, Amanda Fry, founder and CEO of Experienced Nature Group. Amanda has got the most amazing career. I always feel inspired by her. From running a PR business, holy smoke, for 15 years, her stories are incredible and what she's achieved. From launching Jimmy Choo in the Australian market and working with massive brands, to working with celebrities, Priscilla Presley, Kate Hudson, need I say more, to then also working with the Kardashians and helping them launch their global brand. Incredible. Now, with Amanda with me today, we're going to be talking about her business journey and how she's ended up in her new business, or not so new, but Experienced Nature Group, and her journey to get to this point. Here we go. Rumi.
Hey, Rumi. How are you?
I'm so good. I am so, as I said in our intro, just so excited. Like, I've got goosebumps right now. I really do.
Well, you know how there's that number thing where it's like 111 or you keep seeing reoccurring numbers? Yeah. First podcast, first guest, and my business was first developed in Necker when I met you.
Yeah.
That was the new incarnation of my life.
I know. So
Wow.
I know. So when I thought of who can I have join me for this first episode, I couldn't think of anybody better, Amanda. And I want to start with, for our listeners, because Business the Heart Way is all designed to be about storytelling, real conversation, human connection. And I think we need to tell more stories in business for the next generation too. And I guess in addition to storytelling, this podcast is called Business the Heart Way. So I'm very passionate, as you know, about doing business with heart and passion and purpose and really connecting with others who share the same values. So I thought to kick off sharing our story, I think is pretty incredible in itself. And that really sets the tone for today's conversation. So before I get into talking to you, or our chat, and the first question I'm going to ask you, just for the listeners, I want to kind of tell them how we met, and then I'm very keen on your version of events as well. So I think it was 2016, was that right, Amanda? So
it was.
You and I met, and I think, one, you don't meet people that you have such a beautiful connection with every day in life.
That's so true. It was instant with us, wasn't it?
It was.
It was just like instant comfort zone.
Yeah.
I get you, you got me.
Yeah.
Boom.
And friends for life, I would say.
Yeah, 100%.
And to then meet on the most one of the most magical places, Necker Island, Sir Richard Branson's private island. I mean, that kind of story and setting that scene of how we met, it's not an everyday occurrence.
And we were in the Galapagos tortoise house. So we're navigating giant tortoises every night to get home. I mean, it's a bonding experience.
Incredible. Does it
totally
feel surreal when you say how we met? Like Gemma and I met? Yeah.
Completely. And I mean, that whole sort of 5-6 days was just what a ride.
Yeah.
What a ride. It was insane.
Time of our life, I think. And I think, as you alluded to, like our meeting there on Necker Island, it was instrumental for both of us in that we kind of both, you know, what came after Necker. Necker definitely kind of inspired some of that, the path, I guess, and the decisions we made afterwards. So I know for me it was, the year after I moved to Singapore and really had the courage and inspiration from our time on Necker to drive my business up in that part of the world and definitely push myself out of my comfort zone to expand and all the risks and all of that to go into Singapore and Asia. But for you, your journey, I find, is just incredible. So I want to first start to throw it to you. Why don't you give us a recount of Necker, what the experience was like for you, some of those takeaways and memories?
Well, at that stage of my career, I had spent the better part of 20, 25 years working with celebrities all over the world. And, it sounds really great on paper. Business class flights, first class flights, jetting around the world, events in London. Next thing I'm in Canada, all over the place. But the harsh reality of that is, you're working 20-hour days. It's not about you. It's about the talent or the brand or the client. And so you are living this amazing life, but you get so few moments to really stop. And there's a lot of rah-rah online about do a retreat, take time out. But when you're actually in a business, as you would know, the hours in the day, the hours you have with family and friends, the hours you have to yourself are so valuable. So realistically, you get 1 or 2 opportunities a year if you're lucky to go on anything that would allow you to connect, reflect and figure out your next stage. For me, I already had a house in the Southern Highlands as a weekender, which I bought after my dad died because I really wanted to initially buy in the Hunter where his family's from, but I really wanted to invest in a sanctuary because I needed something out of Sydney. And I'd already made the decision at that point not to take up the offer I had to open a PR and marketing agency in LA. Decided LA wasn't for me as much as I love going to all over America. I didn't necessarily want to call it home base. So the challenge then was, okay, where do you go from here? How do you go from representing 19, working in 19 countries, representing a global brand like the Kardashians, which at that time was on everybody's lips.
Yeah.
I had a lot of power. I had a lot of influence. My little black book, I could open doors. I could get into parties. I never saw myself as cool, but I think other people may have. I survived and I thrived because of sheer grit, determination and can-do.
Yeah.
I'm always the can-do girl. There's always a way and we will always find it. There may be sacrifices and challenges, but that's what got me where I needed to go.
Yeah.
And then I was having drinks with some friends and that was when I met Billy and Fiona, who I'd known socially, and they said, well, you're at a crossroad. Maybe this is perfect for you. Why don't you come with us to Necker? And I'd met Richard many times in Sydney, but I've only ever met the Richard Branson you see on the Virgin ads or the parties, the go-to party guy. I hadn't met the guy who works for Wild Aid behind the scenes, who formed the elders and brought them to his island to try and reshape Africa conservation. I hadn't met that Richard, and I wanted to. And I thought, the timing's actually perfect. This is exactly what I need to figure out where do I go from here. So not a great flyer, 24 hours to Miami, then down through Puerto
Rico.
Thank you, Puerto Rico, yeah. They were all just cities. And I arrived on some island and had to get into a plane. My knees were in the back of the pilot's seat because it's only a 3-seater plane and I'm terrified of flying. So I'm thinking, am I going to survive 45 minutes and not grab him and kill him as he's keeping us alive in the air? And then I get off the plane and there is Billy in a boat with a bottle of champagne. And I'm like, thank God.
What a welcome.
It was just I would literally swell. I think I've been traveling for 36 hours and, with time zones and everything. It was crazy. And it was straight into the party. There's no time for breathing. No. We were drinking champagne and all of a sudden I'm surrounded by New Yorkers, people from Singapore. It was just I'm like, okay, this is exactly what I need. I need another perspective from someone looking from the outside in a different journey, in a different path. And then when I went to my room to drop off my stuff, I met you.
Yeah.
And straight away it was marketing PR company. Oh my God, yes, I'm social worker, I'm accountant, I'm a strategic driver, I am 75 things in one as a small business owner, and it's harder for women, and I'm sorry, it just is.
Yeah, I
don't think it's anyone's fault particularly, it just is harder.
Can I just tell you a stat, which blows my mind, sorry.
No, not done.
I read the other day in terms of that, do you know, of all the female founders and business owners, only 1.5% run businesses over $2 million that turn over $2 million. Isn't that a crazy statistic?
Yes.
Wow. I'm just blown away by that because, to your point, it is that little bit harder. And then you think, for only 1.5% of business owners, female business owners, to turn over the 2 million.
Absolutely.
So that's,
And I think that also goes back to the other thing I've really learnt, and I sort of started in conversations with Necker is you got to push through that barrier to get to that 2 million on that next stage because then it does become easier once you get the infrastructure behind you. And as a small business owner, that's always the hardest step.
Yeah.
It's how do you go from just being me to building a really good team and then going, okay, I can actually trust, step back, work on the business, not in the business.
Totally.
So by the time I met you, kindred spirit.
Yeah.
We were both very much, I'm like, this is perfect. So my roomie is an Australian woman. We've had a very similar journey. We both completely understand the challenges and the expectations, the rewards, all the things that go along with that package. And yet we're both here with a very clear picture in mind of what next.
Yeah.
And, of course, that evolved over the series of the next 5 days.
It did, and I think what came about is also just incredible. So tell me then about so we'll continue on the NECA for a moment. So what we met, we did discover that we're kindred spirits, had those similar lived experiences. But what was your week like in terms of leading to the change that followed NECA, which for you I think is incredible because you did, from
Changed my whole life.
Yeah, PR celebrities.
Literally can change my life.
Yeah, to your business today, which we'll get to. So what happened during that week on NECA? Because it was transformational.
It really was. And I think a lot of it was to do with the combination of people. And you can't ever, whilst going on these trips is wonderful, there's also an element of, whilst it's designed by the organiser, an element of luck as well. We had some extraordinary individuals. And I remember having a conversation with Suzanne, who's from Canada, and thinking, this is a woman who introduced herself not only as a life coach, and she works with, Fortune 500 companies and CEOs, but she introduced herself as a vegan life coach.
Yeah.
And that really stuck with me because back in 2016, there were a lot of people on the vegan journey, but nothing like what we're seeing now. Now we're seeing vegan restaurants, all this kind of stuff. And as you know, massive into animal conservation, but I'm not vegan. So I thought it was fascinating that she had put in front of her expertise and skills her life choice. And I looked at that and went, that is a real statement. And she did it at a time when not everyone was doing it. And then met people like Ginger. And I mean, I was thinking about all the personalities, Tom the Texan and his drone company, and I mean, the evolution guys. We met some some astronauts, met some extraordinary people.
Yeah.
And what it reminded me was, and I don't want this to sound sort of icky, but it reminded me that I've always been that can-do, not in solving problems, but also can-do in life. I remember my mother saying to me in my early 20s, I'm really afraid that one day you're going to get a no, because you never do. And I've always been that, oh, yeah, I can get an upgrade because if I ask, it'll happen because I'm super lucky and that's just me. And it does. And so I go in with the expectation quite genuinely that good things are going to happen because I wake up every day happy going, let's go live what's out there. And that begets good things. Yeah. And at this point I'm like, okay, so what has changed for you to limit yourself? At what point did you think this next journey wouldn't be global just because you spent the last 10 years working with these huge celebrities? And I've had some mega moments.
I'm sure.
I mean,
tell us a story because
I
I find
tell you a story
your
of my
celebrity
birthday.
story
I think
is
I told you
incredible.
this at my birthday when we went on the Harvard Cruise.
Yeah.
But I'd been working with, at that point, Priscilla Presley for a few years, and we had launched a brand with the Al-Fayeds into Harrods and then did a tour across Canada. And I got on really well with Priscilla. She's a lovely woman. And being someone who's not an Elvis fan, it actually helped our relationship because I could genuinely look at her and admire the businesswoman without being sucked into fan kingdom. And she and I had some pretty poignant conversations. Now, we're in Harrods. Her son has been arrested for smoking pot somewhere in America. And, of course, the Michael Jackson story is broken after with Lisa Marie. So we are being hounded by 45, 50 paparazzi everywhere we go. Like, hilarious. It was just absolutely, like, UK media is unlike anything on the planet.
Yeah.
They are brutal. So I had some pretty poignant moments. Anyway, I had come back to Australia when I was figuring out my next move, and I'd started working more in travel because that is my passion. It always has been. I'm a great believer, as you know. Travel opens up your mind, the people you meet, your empathy, your understanding, your connection to understanding the immigrant that's come here and the world they came from and why and all of that. And this country is founded on the best food from around the world, you know.
Really?
I would give that up for anything. We just are so lucky. Anyway, so I hadn't seen Priscilla in a few years, and I had resigned from that client, and it was a choice because I really needed to get off the Kardashian juggernaut. It was very brutal.
So sorry, Priscilla and Kardashians at the same time.
But I was working with 4 celebrities, brands for this one particular fashion client,
Right.
And it was through CAA in America as well. And I just went, I need a break. I need to move more into other stuff because it is so time demanding.
And Amanda, can I just point out for our listeners that this is your company that you've built. So you, under your business, you won these amazing contracts. I mean, that's a huge achievement in itself. I mean, it's amazing.
I think a lot of it was because I'd come from talent management, so I understood the contracts. But I also didn't go after celebrity contracts. And so I wasn't the fangirl. I was the businesswoman going, no, this is a business like any other business, and I treated it that way. And so they didn't have to worry about, I mean, photographers were told at my events, you photograph me, you never come to an event again. I was never the story. I was never trying to leverage them for me. It was always about them.
But that also probably is why they liked working, like your...
Totally, I think so, yeah. And that at that reality stage of the world too, I mean, I did the first MTV Awards with, the Osbournes coming out because they really set the tone. And at that juggernaut, which was going around the world at the time, was so new and so different, and everybody wanted in. It was. I mean, honestly, the first time Kim flew out here, her publicist of America said, "Oh, we're not going to come. You can handle it." I had 120 paparazzi at my office. TMZ flew out. Like, this is insane. And of course, it was the first divorce tour, and she was divorcing Chris. Every tour there's a divorce.
Were you at the airport? I remember you saying that you were at the airport and it was that mayhem. Like,
it's on. If you Google it, you'll see Danny at the front just moving media out of the way. We broke Justin Bieber's record for the most press for a celebrity coming into Australia. It was like being at a rock concert. It was nuts.
Stop and think. I mean, like, these are incredible moments. Like, I mean.
And this little story that I'll eventually get to, and I'm sorry, sorry listeners, I'm a talker. I hadn't seen Priscilla for a few years, and I was over in LA, and I can't remember how it happened now, but a mate said, "Why don't you come to G'day LA? Come to this event." One of my friends from Qantas, because Qantas were a partner in the Kardashian tour and Tourism Australia, and I was on the carpet, and I didn't know Priscilla was going to be there, and I saw. Her publicist is a lovely woman and smiled, and Priscilla turned around and saw me. And, to her absolute credit, she crossed the carpet, came and gave me a cuddle, and then crossed back to finish her interview.
Wow. That says a lot.
And so we got on really well. She's a really incredible woman. I have a lot of time for her. What she did with Elvis's legacy is phenomenal. It was so close to being lost. She changed the history of his work. But as I'm standing there after she's gone back, John Travolta walks up to me and goes, "Who are you?" Priscilla doesn't cross a carpet for just anyone. Just stood right in front of me, and I was like,
wow.
I'm Amanda from Australia.
Just Amanda.
Smiling. This is really bizarre. And those are the moments where you go, Wow, okay. That's really cool. And the work we did was good, but there were a lot of good publicists at the time in Sydney. My connection with Priscilla was very much about, we had long conversations about family and legacy and how hard she had to fight to save Graceland and Elvis's back catalogue. But also the time that she used to spend. I've watched her spend 45 minutes with people because they got married to an Elvis song, or their best friend died and they played an Elvis song at the funeral. She understands in a way that some people say they do, but she really does, into every fibre of her being, how much of a pivotal moment in their life that would be. And so what if she gives up an extra 10 minutes? In the scheme of things, isn't that exactly what she should be doing? Yeah. Because for them, this is life-changing. That was their life-changing moment, and she got to participate, and so she felt an enormous sense of responsibility to not make that flippant, fleeting and inconsiderate.
Incredible.
Amazing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess we're talking about business with heart, and that's almost an example, though,
100%.
of personal branding with heart and authenticity and empathy.
And the only other conversation I ever had with her that I won't go into any detail with out of complete respect to her was she's a Scientologist. And, of course, as you can imagine, I think Tom Cruise was jumping on a couch about that time. That's always pretty interesting. But, out of complete respect. And I just had so much. She's a female doing it tough in a man's world, just like we are. She wrote a letter to my mother thanking my mother for letting me come on tour and miss Mum's birthday.
Wow.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah, it's very cool.
She didn't need to do that.
So do you still stay in touch with her today?
No, but I know if I ever see her at an event, I'll get a warm hug.
So were you working with her at that stage just before NECA and we met? Because I know Holy Smoke, when I met you, Holy Smoke was... So you were kind of in...
I was transitioning into travel because I knew I needed something different.
Yeah.
So I'd just done I did the first and I believe only Instagram relay. So we did a relay in 80 countries on Instagram as a travel promotion for International Tourism Day.
What year was that? Was about 2016, thereabouts, was it? Because that would have been a bit
That was, I think, end of 2015 in October, because it was about a 2-year project in the making. I did it with Hello World as the client, and we had to coordinate through, as you can imagine, so many different tourism boards.
Wow.
We pulled 80 countries in and created so much content. It was incredible. It was just a really interesting way to take... I'm a very creative thinker, obviously. It was a really interesting way to experiment with social media when it was still quite interesting and new.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, that's kind of ahead of the time. Like if you look at where Instagram and social media is today.
Totally.
I think that was almost 10 years ago.
The influences one would be in Samoa and one would be in Dubai, and the time zone would be different. And they'd start at sunrise to sunset.
Right.
And then at the end of their last post, I think there was 8 or 10 posts they had to do in the day on these insane itineraries, they would then tag and everyone had a different country path. And so the followers would then jump to the next one in the next time zone and travel around the world over like nearly a 36 to 48-hour period.
You said
it was
took
wicked.
2 years to
It took a long time to pull off because we had a lot of and I mean, I remember them sitting down and meeting with Facebook guys who are running Instagram. And they're like, what? I'm like, that's what we're going to do. That's how we're going to do it. And they're like, wow. And they were very supportive, but it was just, I mean, it was the very beginning of social media innovation.
Yeah,
we didn't really know how it was going to roll. We just knew we wanted user-generated content, and that's what we got. We got
says a lot about
thousands of photos.
Yeah, and the fact that, I mean, you were ahead of your time and you're kind of like pioneer in many ways in with what you've been doing.
That was definitely pioneering.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I really went, okay, I've got to go back to my passion. I never wanted to be a celebrity, which is why I ended up working with them because I understood that world and it was a business. And so I had a very specific role to play. I would never give up my privacy the way they have to. I couldn't imagine not going and walking my dogs or buying a carton of milk without makeup. That would do my head in. And you give up a lot for that. There are great trade-offs, obviously, but and so this was a big part of what is my next transition. And all my friends are like, man, your face lights up when you travel, and that's what you do. And I was going to Rwanda and saving gorillas and taking celebrities into Africa for school programs, and I went to Vietnam to look at the civet cats and how can we help conservation with the gibbons, and so the NECA moment for me was, I got to go home and do this.
Yeah,
I got to go home.
So on NECA, what was it when we were in the temple? Like the temple is one of the most incredible buildings there, where leaders have come together.
I got
to
chills.
brainstorm. Is that where
I got serious chills in that room? I think that was when I realised how two-dimensional Richard's profile in the press is versus the real game he's playing. And there's a very, very different game that he's part of. And it's much more effective if it's not trivialised by the media.
Yeah.
And so I kind of thought, okay, when you start putting, Obama, Desmond Tutu, Mandela in a room, These are brilliant minds, and this is a whole another stratosphere. So these are global problems that will take years to trigger a solution, and you can't get caught up in the bottom end of all the fighting, because otherwise you'll never maintain the goal. And the turning point for me was realising he was capable of that, and it became very clear when he talked about the shuttle disaster that first night with all of us, just how much of a private thinker he was. And you don't get to where he is without. But he just doesn't show up very often. I mean, you've seen that, especially since the work you've done since NECA.
Yeah.
And then when we were at dinner, I think maybe the third night, he came over to me and said, I heard you work with Wild Aid. And I said, yeah. And so Wild Aid is an organisation that is all about stopping black market. If you take away the demand for rhino horn or for whatever, then the game changes, because you can no longer sell the product and they won't risk their lives to do it. So, and he said to me, you obviously have seen, a little bit of what I'm doing. And I said, well, it's, the flamingos, you've reinstated the migration path, you're bringing species in from Madagascar and mainland Africa that are on the brink and putting them on deserted islands in British Virgin territory and bringing them into healthy populations. And I thought that was extraordinary. And he said to me, do you want to go out and see with my zoologist? And I looked at him, I said, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And he said, meet him at 5 o'clock at the dock. I said, good night, I'm going to bed. So I literally got up and walked about to bed. Left you guys all drinking shots or whatever you're doing. I'm like, I'm out of here. This is it, I'm gone.
Yeah.
So, I trudged down in my little golf cart in the middle of the night. 5 o'clock was still dark to meet this guy on the wharf. But I tell you what, it was like being like a set of a Pixar animation. We went to this island. I don't even know where it was. So we just went to this island, and he was a really cool guy with kind of dreadlocks and stuff.
Okay.
And he was about 5 or 6 paces in front of me. And he started making this kind of noise, and literally lemurs started coming out of the trees. It was like this just...
Wow.
And I'm following this line, and all I can think about is that, that dancing lemur in the Pixar movie. I can't remember the name of it. And they were all like that. These were happy animals. And I was just going, I'm with the lemur Pied Piper. Like, this is amazing. And the photographs I've got, incredible. And that moment I went, I've got to go home.
Yeah.
I've got to save koalas, I've got to save wombats, I've got to save. I just went, everyone's got to find their path, and there are people doing this over here. I don't need to come and do this. I need to go find Amanda's journey.
So we come home from NECA, and then your change was quite incredible. So I kind of want to get to your business today and where we're at. Yeah. So then what happens? You come home, so we're again in 2016, and you make some drastic changes to really follow your heart.
Within 6 months, I had closed my PR agency.
Yeah. Wow.
I had moved from Paddington in the penthouse apartment where the office was, and resigned from all my clients, and decided to move into my house in Berrima.
So what courage, that's a very courageous, brave move.
I lost my mind. I remember sitting down and doing the math and going, if I have to pull beers in the pub, I can still pay the mortgage. I just remember thinking, oh, God, okay. But I also knew, sometimes you got to rip the Band-Aid off. And I then started meetings, and I managed to pull in an investor for about $120,000.
Yeah.
So I had some seed money, and I thought, okay, I'm all right now. And that happened in 6 weeks.
Wow. So you did that when you got back while you were trying to close down
I was living in Berrima by December 2016, and by the second week of January I had money in the bank from an investor.
So there was no stopping you. You kind of really came home and was just for it.
But I don't think I would have been able to have maintained one business and had the single-minded purpose. And what it showed me, particularly after doing the Instagram relay and selling that, and then doing this, is I can sell stuff. I can market my ability and my confidence to deliver in a way that I'm in a higher risk category, but people will back that.
Yeah.
And And it's good to know that about yourself because
isn't it?
And it's not being egotistical or arrogant in knowing that, but it is an incredibly important skill if you want growth. If you don't believe it, why would they?
Exactly. It's interesting you should say that because in our Young Gems program, we talk about, we actually cover the entrepreneur in you because, we impart to future entrepreneurs that you do have to understand yourself because at the end of the day, it's about you as the founder. People will invest in you, buy from you, if you also have self-belief and confidence. Because if you're not going to believe in what you're doing, why would anybody else, to your point, why would anybody else?
And you launched this idea at NECA. Yeah. This is when you shared it with all of us and got some pretty powerful support.
Yeah. There's definitely but you're a beautiful case study and point in terms of those traits of a founder. Like we've just your story now, it's courage, it's self-belief, it's taking risks because closing Holy Smoke, like a successful PR company, again, that's risk, that's courage right there.
It did make me realise I couldn't sell it because they wanted me. So I knew I couldn't sell it.
Yeah.
So that now the challenge I have is in my current business is how do I turn it to something that at some point I can retire and I'm not integral to it.
Yeah.
And that's why in travel and tourism it's a little bit different because it's the customer journey as opposed to the people facilitating that behind the scenes.
So when you were, again, kind of coming into your journey, because I feel it's so inspired by it, though, Amanda, because, like I said, it takes courage. You're following your passion and purpose, shifting gear or kind of changing a little bit to follow. And
I've changed gear again. I mean,
so,
you probably know that I've bought a property now, so the next level is happening. It's here.
So walk us through then from, okay, you go to move to the Southern Highlands. You're in this startup phase now of a second business now.
So I thought let's launch a nature festival, first wilderness festival in the world. Great hook marketing. Let's go. We'll all go and glamp in nature because glamping was very new back then, and it's all going to be wonderful. And we're going to create these incredible experiences. And I had backlights. I found an old abandoned mining town in Joadja. Like it was extraordinary. $2,500 for 3 days, sold this package, executed this product. It was magical. And it was the highest end glamping we could find anywhere in the world.
Wow.
And that went incredibly well, and I began that glamping journey and decided over the next 18 months to invest in my own tents and move away from working with other partners and value adding, and that kind of went on one trajectory. But in the meantime, all these old contacts from Sydney had kind of found me and said, well, if you're doing that, can you do it for us? And all of a sudden I found myself looking after high-profile people who wanted to come down. I then realised there was a massive gap in the market that in the luxury, domestic and international travel, no one was running access to the Southern Highlands.
Right.
Because as a region, it's not on the Bureau of Statistics list because under 50,000 people was not marketed internationally. So everyone went to the Blue Mountains and the Hunter.
Despite it being so close to Sydney.
And yet it's Sydney's Hamptons because all Sydney people actually have houses down there.
Especially,
and the money and the celebrities. I mean, from Nicole Kidman to... I mean,
especially during COVID, I think, it
100%,
really took off.
The whole world moved down. So I'm looking at this going, well, I know how to play at the top end of the market. I know what they want. And one thing I've learned in travel is a lot of people want to be in the luxury market and they think they've got a luxury product, but they actually don't. So you really have to understand the need of that customer.
And so your background, like you've really channeled a lot of that.
I knew exactly what they wanted and I knew the demands and I knew what was coming.
Yeah.
I've had French ministers down there from clients, living in countries and large families. I understand that world and that expectation and you've got to get the mix of, you need the luxury touches and the right property or the right hotel. You need the great food, all that kind of stuff, but you cannot also sanitize it. If you don't put some real in, they could be anywhere in the world and there's no point being in Australia. So how do you make it Southern Highlands specific and Australian specific while also catering for all their other needs? And it's not nearly as easy as people think.
I'm sure.
But it's second nature to me. I've been doing it for 30 years in different forms. And so all of a sudden I started shifting into doing touring. COVID came along, the whole world changed, glamping started changing, they changed the LEP so people could start putting their own tents up permanently. So I decided, okay, glamping kept me alive and running some business events during the COVID periods between lockdowns. So that kept me buoyant. And then I thought, okay, it's time to get out of glamping. It's over. What's next? And I'm always on the crest of the wave. Yeah. So I got out of glamping and decided to put all of my energy into the international market, and that's what I'm doing. In saying that, on the flip side of all of this is the business was set up with, the Jacques Cousteau quote of, if they fall in love with it, they'll fight to protect it. So everything we do is about, how do I connect you with nature? How do I make you love that wombat? How do I make you want to be involved in the conservation of the natural world? And understand that we all have to live here and make a living, but there are compromises that works for both sides.
So that's really interesting, because I wanted to come back to passion and purpose and problem solving, because they're 3 Ps that we cover in our Young Gems program. Yeah. And I think this business of yours now, you've got passion, clearly, like that's very clear. You have purpose in the business that you're doing. You do it with heart and you're solving a problem. And I think the fact that you are taking what you've just alluded to is it's luxury travel, but you're connecting it to conservation. Yeah. And I find that really fascinating, because then coming back to our meeting at NECA, I mean, you're combining kind of a few passions of yours, and that kind of came clear from that trip, and your desire to help wildlife and conservation and kind of impact the world, and you're doing it now with connecting travel in a positive kind of way, and I find that really fascinating. So how did...
Well, it's kind of interesting, because if COVID didn't happen, I wouldn't have bought my property now. COVID was the final linchpin of, okay, you've got a great tourism business, you're getting international clients here now, coming and doing day trips or overnight stays, you've got the glamping business going really well, you're running events, they're selling out, everything's hunky-dory. COVID goes, how are we going to pay the mortgage, how are we going to live, income dried up, it was completely insane. So I'm on this dream 2.5-year business trajectory. By the end of 2019, the bushfires are surrounding the region. The whole country's on fire. We're sending helicopters with clients back to Sydney, because it's not very fun to be holidaying in the middle of a fire zone. No. We're all evacuating houses. The fires come, they move through, and then the floods arrive, and then I'm doing a entrepreneur program for Pure Pursuit. So Pure is the largest travel luxury brand in the world, and they do a big junket every year in Morocco. They're out of the UK. Okay. They have what's called Pure Pursuits, and they do every year they choose a different destination. And Alchemy and Tourism Australia partnered with me to deliver the Australian one. We delivered that the first week of March, and 7 days later we're in lockdown. So the whole world's gone mad, and I'm sitting there going, like pretty much every other Australian, oh my God, I've got no money. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God.
So on that, because I also know during this period, I think I phoned you, I was in Singapore, and I reached out to you in my own little crisis mode to get your support and advice.
That.
I was really like, do I stay in the business? Do I go? You get those, you're overwhelmed at times with challenges.
So full on.
Yeah.
And for everyone.
And for you. Like,
no one was untouched in COVID.
No,
every person
some sectors
at
were.
Every part. But everyone had a different, like it was awful.
So how did you get through? Because again, like we talk about the highs and lows in entrepreneurship, and I think some people they might feel like what you do or what I do is glamorous. I mean, you hear your stories and you hear some of my stories, but I think what happens underneath it all is that there are amazing highs, but there's just as many lows. And it's the resilience that gets you through, and the grit and determination, which you mentioned early on.
I've been on the floor in fetal position crying like a baby, going, what the hell am I doing?
Oh, same. I have
What's
my girls.
Such a happy day.
No. What's the worry for me is my girls come in and see me in the shower in that position. They're like, Mommy, which client upset you today?
I think you just have to sort of say to yourself, if you're not going through the extremes, you're not on a journey of success, because there is no guts without glory. Like all that kind of stuff is mixed in, and if you're not seeing that, you're not pushing hard enough. So I kind of look at it and go, I've had moments where I've been on the floor crying, and I've sat up and gone, oh, wow, it's one of those days. And then I kind of look at myself almost from standing 10 feet away, and I go, okay, so we've done this before and we're still here.
Exactly.
All right, what are we going to do? Because it's time to clearly stop crying, pick ourselves up. Or go watch Netflix for 2 hours and just pretend the world doesn't exist and then come back with a better attitude.
Absolutely. I think sometimes I look in the mirror and go, come on, Gemma, like, come on, you can do it. You can do it. You know, you've got to.
I kind of feel like if you don't go there, you're not invested enough.
Agree.
It is part of the ride.
It is, isn't it?
And you need to kind of go,
I'm all in.
You learn much more from your failures.
Yeah,
we all know this.
Absolutely.
And boy, you don't do it again, do you?
You try not to at
you
least.
No. It's like, wow, that was not a good day.
No. So there were many of those days for many of us during COVID. But I mean, another friend I'm going to be interviewing shortly, she's in the cafe food world, and I know for her it was, again, overnight brand being successful overnight with COVID, like it was an immediate, hit to her business. So when the international travel industry is obviously impacted with COVID, so what happened then? How did you maintain that focus?
Everything closed.
How do you maintain that?
Well,
that
I
sense of
suppose
spark or that?
we got lucky in the sense that our mortgages got frozen eventually. We all got some. I just employed my first staff member, of course, and I didn't want to lay her off, so I put her on JobKeeper. I figured out how I was going to live very simply. I started walking my dogs more, and I kind of went, okay, this is a chance to sleep in a way I haven't slept in years. This is a chance to really start thinking. And I had 1,000 DIY jobs. So I threw myself in wholeheartedly. I also did a lot of phone calls from Suzanne and Ginger, yourself, people I met on Necker, people I'd just done Pure Pursuits with. I remember speaking to Jessie and Penny from Tourism Australia, who gave me some great advice and said, we're here. And everyone was just connecting, going, we all feel like we're in quicksand. No one really knows, but we need to just wait and see what's going to happen. And in Australia, we did get help financially, which a lot of other countries didn't. And for that, we should be very grateful.
Yeah.
Totally. So, they were very, very lean years. But I also saw a couple of opportunities. And the first one was sleep, get centred, and really start planning for when this is over. I don't know why, but I was never personally afraid of dying. I didn't feel that sense of panic, and I think in regional Australia it's much easier to isolate. So, and I'm pretty physically fit, so I wasn't worried. I was much more worried about my mum.
Yeah.
So I didn't have that concern, but we didn't know how long it was going to go on for. So I went, okay, just buckle down, think about what you can do, how do you stay engaged, all that kind of stuff. And then I started fixing things up around the house, finishing painting fences, getting all those jobs done I never had time for. Now, my neighbours had tried to sell their house in Berrima, which before this took about 2 years to move a house in Little Berrima. I mean, it's a tiny little village in the middle of nowhere, but it punches above its weight. And they put their house on the market, I think, for $950,000 and couldn't sell it and took it off the market. COVID came, and 6 months into it, everyone wanted to get out of Sydney. They sold their house for $1.5 million.
Oh, wow.
And I went, huh? And I bought my house for $465,000. Spent a couple of $100,000 doing it up.
Yep.
But I had a beautiful 5-bedroom house in a highly sought after protected lifestyle village in the Highlands.
Gorgeous.
And the market shifted by 38% in the first 12 months in my village.
Nice.
So by the second year, I'm like, I'm going to rent, I'm going to sell.
That's right. I forgot you did that, yeah.
And I'm going to live mortgage free. And then I never have to worry about this ever again. And so I sold for $1.85 million.
Wow.
And then I moved out to Robertson for 6 months and went, okay, what am I going to do? Paid off my mortgage, went, okay. And I flew to Tassie with a friend. Really, really great mate. I knew from back in the entertainment days. She used to work for Harry and Miller's group, and she's still a really good mate. She's actually in the Highlands now. Okay. And we flew out to Tassie for a holiday, and so I really want to go and check out this place called, goodness me, what's it called? Not Lawn. Maybe it's Lawn. I can't remember. Anyway, we decided to go out to the West Coast and check out this little village, and really remote. And I found an old church for $300,000, and I thought, okay, when the end of the world comes, which it will, it's either going to be an apocalypse or zombies or, for those of you who don't know, and Jem does know this, I'm a total sci-fi futurist fantasy geek, so I believe all this stuff is happening. So my doomsday was, we'll just buy a little church in Tassie as a
Tassie.
family holiday spot
wow.
for $300,000, and I'll do it up, and then when everything goes south, we can all just get on a boat or a plane and get down to Tassie. So I'm standing there with the real estate. We spent about an hour and a half looking at this church. It was about $285,000. And I'm thinking, right, I'm going to spend a couple of $100,000 doing it up, and I'm literally on the west coast in remote Tasmania, 4 or 5 hours from Hobart.
Okay.
And then, of course, I've got to fly to Hobart or catch the boat. And we had this conversation, and I figured out that I couldn't take my dogs on the boat.
Uh-huh.
Talk about a moment, then. Right?
Yep.
So I'm like, well, I'm not going on holidays with my dogs.
No.
not in Australia. That's outrageous. I'm not going to leave them every time I want to come down and visit my house. I want to bring them with me. But you have to leave them in the car, and the cargo hole and the ship. And I'm like, no way. Animals have died down there in the past. So I'm like, not going to happen. So I was sitting down, and Suzanne and I were having dinner. I was like, wow, maybe I shouldn't buy in Tassie. And I went back to sort of realestate.com in Southern Highlands and went, I've been really specific about my search.
Yeah.
3 villages only. Maybe I need to widen my search.
Uh-huh.
And I found this 55-acre property on the border of Bundanoon and Penrose. And I would never have normally bought in Penrose because I decided it wasn't right for me.
Is that closer to Canberra?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
About 35 minutes from Berrimah. So Bundanoon would be the most southern edge of the Southern Highlands.
Right.
Beautiful village. I absolutely love it. And I thought, isn't that interesting? I've got to fly all the way to Tasmania to realise I can actually move
closer
15 kilometres further out than I thought. I mean, hilarious.
Wow.
And I saw this property and I went, I'm going to look at that when I get back. And so I decided that Tasmania wasn't for me as much as I think it would be a great investment. I needed to have somewhere to live first. And I went and visited this property, and it was, I mean, the boundary on one side's 1.4 kilometres. It's wild when you kind of go home and that's your land. It's so weird. And I went, oh, man, what I could do with this. Like what? And I back onto the national park.
So is this part of, I know we've talked about legacy, and I know, there's a bigger purpose, of course. Are these, here, is this you bringing conservation and the future into the business? And how does that play out
48 hours ago, I registered a new company called Banyula Wild Proprietary Limited, which is the new name of my land.
Wow.
And it is going to be my wildlife sanctuary. And we release wombats in April.
Oh, my gosh. So that gives
I'm
me
there.
goosebumps. So if we go back to Necker.
So
and
that
then
was the dream.
And
so
now
my
you're doing
wildlife conservation area.
Oh, Amanda, that
and
is incredible.
It happened this week. It's all official. I have a meeting on Monday with the Land Care Services to do some work on what's the best word? Parts of Bundanoon were fire affected, so the bottom end of my property all through bottom Mort National Park was fire affected. Now, what happens in the Australian bush? It's designed around fire. So, but the germination that happened after those kind of fires meant that all the black wattle has just gone ballistic. And so you've got new undergrowth coming through that normally would have rebalanced. But because we've had 3 years of rain, they're not fighting for water. So the undergrowth is not dropping back to bracken fern and waratahs and banksias and all the lower growth, which you need for the animals because they eat all the birds and stuff. And so what's happening is the black wattle is really thick. So we're clearing some of the black wattle out to revegetate the lower way it used to be pre-fire.
Right.
So I've got Land Services coming out on Monday to assess me to see if we can remove some of the dead trees. We're going to leave quite a few there because they're great for nesting, and I don't want to, animals come first. But we're looking at whether I qualify to plant koala trees.
Oh, wow.
I want to become a koala corridor.
So wouldn't
that be cool?
It's very, very cool.
I had this great dream that Tilly, my beagle, the first week I was staying at the new property, Tilly walked through the front door with a koala on her back. It was the most bizarre dream. And I went, okay.
The more you talk about things, maybe manifestation is part of your,
Not quite sure how the beagle fits in with all of it, but anyway.
But you said
she's very cute.
It's just like your vision and how things come to be for you is, but all those things that we were talking about, I think
never
it doesn't
Jem.
It doesn't just happen, does it? Though you've made this happen.
But if I look back 3 years ago and say to you, I would own 55 acres, and be in a position now where I'm building wombat enclosures to release. You know, I've worked out where my lyrebirds are and the goannas across the road, and I know, I know where two of my possums live. I've got two other wombats that are on the property, and they've just retunneled a new spot. Like, I know my land.
Yep.
I've got two swampies by the water tank every morning. I know what time the pack of kangaroos come in, so I can let the girls have their off leash before they arrive. Like, I know this land after a year. If you'd said that to me 3 years ago, I would have looked at you and said, what? And it came down to a really simple factor. I was standing in my house in Barrowman and went, all my life I've wanted to build this house, a house like this, and I did it. What is more important now?
Yeah.
Do I still want the house, or do I want to live mortgage-free and live the dream?
And have impact by, again, kind of your passion and purpose is right front and centre, really.
When you break it down, you know the answer before you ask it.
So
you just got to admit it to yourself.
I know.
I went, I can give up the kitchen. I can give up my favourite things. I can have a new dream, and I have a new dream now.
Beautiful big dream it is. But
Well, my windows went in November. I've been living without windows for 9 months. The joys of having to do up a cottage, but it's all done now. And my dining room table looks directly as the sun sets.
Oh, gorgeous.
And out over the dam, and it is a lot of work to be done, but we'll get there.
And will you open this? Is the intention to open this up to or how will you combine this with the travel? Is it about being international guests?
This is a great question. So at the moment, I was toying with the idea of doing accommodation, and I think I'll do a tiny house or two, but probably just some friends and family. I don't think I want to do it.
Yeah.
I don't think I want to become an accommodation person again. I've done that with glamping. What I'm more interested in is having people come and have a glass of wine at sunset and watch the kangaroos feed. Come for a bushwalk and learn about bush tucker. I've already got sarsaparilla, mountain devil. I found all this local bush tucker already growing on the land. I think I'm more interested in creating experiences there for really small, intimate groups.
Yeah, beautiful.
Obviously, there's some things I'm going to be very careful of. They follow the right rules. But we do an koala experience at the moment with Shoalhaven Zoo. And, when you're into animal conservation, it's the role of zoos in Australia is a complex one. We have great zoos here. So that's number one. It's not like other countries. We're never going to see the Tiger Kings in this country, so we don't have to worry about that. But to deny the fact that we need animals for education purposes is naive in a world where I wish they were all wild, but it's not the world in which I live.
Yeah.
So what do you do? And if you work with programs where they rotate the animals who will help with and you can't cuddle them, they can touch them, and there's very strict rules around it. But we do one-on-one experiences with our international guests in intimate settings. So it's just two people and a koala and a ranger.
That's pretty special experience.
Pretty amazing. So I'm looking at how do we work more closely with something like Shoalhaven Zoo, potentially to do that more regularly. And rather than move the koala to different locations when they visit the Highlands, one of the things we might do, and I'm talking to them now, is if I put some infrastructure in, then we can bring them to a place where you have things without having to carry it all.
Right.
And then it will be the same experience for the guest.
Gotcha.
At the moment, my only goal with my land is the release of animals that have been in rehabilitation because they're away from the road and they're safe. Yeah. And I want them to be in an environment where we can keep an eye on them and make sure they thrive, because often they were little joeys for wombats and stuff, and so they haven't had their mother teaching them. They've been with carers. So that's goal number one, and we'll see where that goes. But, when I got the paperwork through for the new business, I was like, oh, my goodness, that's like a milestone.
Congratulations, darling.
Thanks, darling. So I sat at Necker going, okay, so I'm just going to move to the country. I'm going to set up a nature tourism business, and then sometime in the future I'm going to help with koalas and kangaroos and wallabies and wallaroos and 2024. And
it's happening.
I think I'm going to look back in 2 years and go, wow.
I'm so proud of you. I think to know I was again, coming back to our connection, to be there, see you from the very start, kind of have this change and where you're at. It's incredible.
It's
well
nuts,
done.
Isn't it?
Well done. So
I rang my niece and nephew and I said to them, okay, I own the land, so you'll probably be taking me out in a box or just bury me next to the beagles, down the back of the garden somewhere, scatter my ashes, whatever. But you're going to inherit this, and I'm building this, and I need you to know what I'm building.
Yeah.
because I need you to understand I expect you to continue it. You'll have kids of your own one day, and to be able to bring them away for the weekend and see a kangaroo in the wild or a wombat will be even more rare when you're older. So I need you to understand why I want you to hold on to this. I mean, we don't owe any money, we don't have to worry about it, it's just there now. And they both said, so cute. Abby, my niece, they're twins, said to me, oh, no problems, Auntie Mandy, I'll sort that out. But, I probably want to bring some horses to us. Okay. And then my nephew, also 14, said, well, if I'm away playing cricket for Australia, I can help Abby.
God love them. How gorgeous.
Okay, well, you both in? They said yes. Okay.
So you've got it all set up. It's all ready to go.
And they both actually love the place. They come and stay all the time.
Well, I still have to get down there.
Look, it's. I wake up to lyrebirds and kookaburras. It is the most peaceful way to start the day.
How different to your moments around, I don't know, travelling around the world with celebrities.
And totally. And I love coming to Sydney, or I love travelling now. It's super exciting. Yeah. And I think also as you get older, you want different things.
Yeah.
But I keep having these kind of moments where I kind of go, isn't that interesting that the path you never thought would be achievable? How could I afford land? How could I afford all of this? It has been some of the biggest disasters in the planet that have actually facilitated that change for me. Really weird. But I there's no question in my heart I'm on the right path. And thus the reason after 40 years, I was 18 years old when I applied to work in Antarctica for the first time. And here I am, 58. I'm an old woman. I just feel about 35 though.
You look 35. You look 35,
I don't, but I love you for saying that. I'm about, in 4 weeks' time I'll be on the White Continent. And I'm and it's the whole entrepreneur is a journey with Sarah and Steve, who I've done stuff with before, and they're amazing. So Edmund Hillary's grandson is coming, and I'm so excited by the people we'll be with. And you've done Antarctica, so you understand. This is my first big kind of foray again into being around other entrepreneurs. So I'm so excited to see where my brain's going to be when I come back. Like I just
buckle up. But as we were saying just before we started this, like 2024 seems it's already kind of kicked off in the right way.
Boom.
A lot of things coming to fruition for you. So I want to ask you, for our listeners, budding entrepreneurs or people who are considering going into business or maybe already in business but wanting to change to do something following the passion and purpose, what would be a few words of advice for anybody considering this journey? Like, if you were to reflect back on what's been an incredible adventure.
Every time I have had a moment to stop, I have found the path, I've found the people, and I've found the way. And it's always the hardest thing is to get off the treadmill for a moment. And I also feel like I've been extremely lucky because there are a lot of people out there selling entrepreneurial products that I don't think are entrepreneurial. So I would say to them that just as you've invested time in your business, invest time in finding your tribe because you're my tribe.
You're my tribe.
And so I found you in that journey. I was speaking to Suzanne in Canada only a couple of months ago. We had a great catch-up call. I needed some help and advice, and she gave me some. I said, "Hun, I'm sorry to reach out, but I really, you're the right person for this." And she said, "No dramas at all. It was gorgeous catch-up." Find your tribe. Find the people, and it's so hard to do because you'll join a few organisations and you won't get it right first, and I did that. But once you do, hold on to it. Because they're the people, you might not speak to each other all the time because you're so busy, but you need the right advice and you need people who have the best of intentions for you. They're not competitors. They're not in your everyday world of your business. They're a step away, but they also understand what it's like to walk in your shoes.
Yeah.
And they will give you the best advice, and they'll kind of tell you what you probably already know, but sometimes you're a little bit too afraid to admit or to face. Because every time I've slowed down, it's been life-changing. And I don't know what it is yet, but I know I'm going to come back from this trip and I'm going to do something equally mad.
I was going to say,
and I'm excited for what on earth it is.
We're going to have to book our glass of wine in full.
Oh my God. So I have no idea. And obviously I'm still running a business while I'm away, and I've reduced down the amount of clients we have in region. I've got really good people looking after them. A lot of my stuff while I'm away is just catching up on emails. The beautiful thing about that is I'm going to be on the other side of the world, so I can do it all at night. You manage.
Do you know,
we'll get by.
We thought Necker was magical. Amanda, when you get to Antarctica, I mean,
know. I'm going to cry.
Oh my gosh.
I'm going to cry like a baby.
I can only imagine what you will come back with.
I'm going to cry like a baby. I've always, penguins just rock my world.
Oh gosh. You should smell the penguin poo, though. It's disgusting.
I might buy a penguin onesie and wear it on shore.
Has anybody told you about the penguin poo?
No.
Oh my gosh. Just be prepared, because you get out.
Really smelly?
So smelly. It's like pink and it's just smelly. But
fish.
Yeah. It's a krill. But they're so cute.
No one tells you about the leeches when you go and climb mountains in Rwanda and sit with silverbacks. Let me tell you, there are leeches everywhere. I've done it 3 times now, and it's like, not the sexy part of the chat.
But all fun. So I can't wait to catch up when you're back and see your photos, and maybe you'll join us again and tell me what's next in store for you.
Well, thanks, darling.
Thank you so much for today.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for your friendship. Young Gem started, and my business started in Necker, as a lot of other journeys, and your relationship with Ginger and the work you guys have done together. And, it's amazing what can kickstart. So who knows? Who knows what's going to happen?
And coming back to this is all about business with heart, I think, and your point about tribe, and just, we can make a difference through business. I think there is a lot to be said for creating a business, running a business. It's not just for selfish reasons at all, which I think some people think you're going to business to make money. It's not about that. It's about passion and purpose and connection, and I guess that's why we're here. But definitely business with heart, Amanda, and having you in my tribe, I know, authenticity and staying true to yourself, and then those that believe in you and you believe in yourself, all of that kind of plays a part in this. So I wouldn't be here today also without your support. So thank you for being my first guest. Lots of love.
Oh, darling, thank you. And thank you so much for having me. I am extremely proud of you, and a real testament was your get-together for International Women's Day and the people around you. Yeah. And I think we've seen that in both of our friendship circles.
Good people.
It's especially when you're a mum and you've got so much else going on, so important. I cannot wait to see where this podcast goes.
Wow. You're the first, darling. So, our listeners, I'll have to get Amanda back, because I know this is probably going to be a hard act to follow, Amanda, opening with you.
Thanks, darling.
Love you.
Love you too.